The impossible creation cook and suspense in the vast dark expanse of space. Humanity stood on the edge of something impossible. The galaxy had witnessed countless wars battles between the most advanced civilizations and deadly weapons that could wipe out entire planets. But even among all of this chaos, there was one creation that should never have existed, a ship so advanced, so powerful that it could turn the tide of any war. The very idea of it was insane, yet there it was, ready to emerge from the depths of human ingenuity. It started as nothing more than a whisper, a rumor among the highest leaders of humanity. There were murmurs of a new weapon, a new warship that would change everything. But no one truly believed it could happen. The enemy forces were vast, their technology superior, and the resources required to build such a weapon were unimaginable. The warships of the past had been large, slow-moving giants, powerful, but easily destroyed. The human race had no chance of creating something that could stand up to the enemies they faced. Yet a small group of brilliant minds, engineers, scientists, and strategists, believed otherwise. They had a vision of a ship unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, a ship that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy, not just because of its firepower, but because of its sheer presence. The idea seemed impossible, but they were determined to make it a reality. The first step was to gather resources, something that was no easy feat. Humanity was struggling, stretched thin across countless fronts in an ongoing war. Supplies were limited, and every scrap of metal, every drop of fuel was accounted for. But in secret, the team managed to find the materials they needed, and slowly, piece by piece, the ship began to take shape. The project was kept hidden from the rest of the world. No one could know about it, not even the military leaders who commanded the forces that fought on the front lines. The ship had to be a surprise, a weapon that would appear out of nowhere and strike fear into the hearts of enemies. If word got out, the enemies would stop at nothing to destroy it before it even had a chance to launch. Months turned into years. As the team worked in the shadows, no one saw the progress. No one knew what was happening behind the walls of the secret facility. But with each passing day, the warship grew. It was larger than anything humanity had ever imagined, a sleek, imposing vessel built with advanced technology from every corner of the human empire. Its hull shimmered with an otherworldly glow, reflecting the light of distant stars. Its engines, fueled by a cutting-edge energy core, hummed with raw power, ready to be unleashed. Yet, as the ship neared completion, doubts began to creep in. Could this truly work? Could something so advanced, so impossible, even function? The scientists who had worked on it poured every ounce of their knowledge into it, but even they were unsure if it could ever be more than a dream. The weaponry was unlike anything seen before. Plasma cannons capable of incinerating enemy ships, with a single shot, shields that could withstand the harshest of attacks, and an AI system that could think faster than any human mind. But would it be enough? One scientist, Direleno, stood on the observation deck of the facility, staring at the nearly completed warship. She had dedicated her life to this project, sacrificing everything for the hope that it would be humanity's salvation. Her colleagues had laughed at the idea at first. They'd said it was impossible, that there was no way to make it work. But now, standing here watching the warship grow, she felt a spark of hope that she couldn't explain, but the fear was still there, the fear that they had created something that was too dangerous, something that could change the course of the war in ways they couldn't predict. What if it didn't work? What if it was too powerful for humanity to control? What if it was more of a curse than a blessing? The final pieces of the warship were being put in place, and soon it would be ready for its first test. But before they could take it out of the facility and into space, there was one final thing to consider: the enemy they were watching. They always were, and once the warship was revealed, there would be no going back. The enemies would know what humanity had created. They would know that a new force had emerged, one that could obliterate them in the blink of an eye. Dervost turned away from the observation deck, her heart racing. The countdown had begun. In just a few hours, the warship would be fully operational. But as the hours ticked down, the question remained: would it live up to the impossible expectations they had set for it? Or would it fail, becoming nothing more than a cautionary tale of humanity's ambition? The suspense was unbearable. The galaxy held its breath, waiting for what would come next, and for the first time humanity had something that could change everything. A ship that shouldn't exist yet it was about to be unleashed. The unseen power. The warship sat silently in the hangar, its massive frame casting long shadows across the cold metallic floor to the untrained eye. It might have looked like just another ship, but to those who had worked on it, it was something far beyond ordinary. It was the culmination of years of Southeast secrecy, ingenuity, and sacrifice. Humanity had poured everything into this creation, and now it was time to reveal what had been hidden for so long. As the hangar doors slowly creaked open, the warship's engines powered up with a hum that sent a ripple of anticipation through the air. The scientists, engineers, and military personnel watching from the observation deck exchanged nervous glances. The ship had passed every test so far, but this was different. This was the moment that would determine whether it was truly the weapon they had hoped for, or something far more dangerous. Dr. Elena Voss, who had spent sleepless nights overseeing the ship's development, stood at the front of the crowd, her eyes locked on the ship. She had seen the blueprints, the schematics, and the simulations. She knew what it was capable of, but now, as the ship systems came to life, the reality of it hit her. The power that this warship contained was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. The ship's primary weapon, a massive plasma cannon, crackled with energy. It was capable of launching devastating energy blasts that could obliterate entire fleets in a matter of seconds. But that was just the beginning. The warship was equipped with cutting-edge technology that no enemy could match. Its energy shields were nearly impenetrable, able to absorb even the most advanced enemy fire without so much as a scratch. It had stealth capabilities that allowed it to appear and disappear at will, making it impossible to track or intercept. But what made this ship truly terrifying wasn't just the technology, it was the crew that made the warship. Was more than just a machine, it was a living entity connected to its crew in ways that were difficult to understand. The humans aboard the ship could communicate with the vessel's AI system as if it were an extension of themselves. The ship seemed to think, move, and fight with the precision of a well-trained army. It was as if the warship was alive, and that made it all the more deadly. The first mission was about to begin. The human fleet, Fizz, near the edge of their home system, was preparing for an engagement with an enemy force that had been terrorizing the galaxy for years. The alien fleet, known for their overwhelming numbers and superior weaponry, had been pushing humanity back across the stars. But the warship was about to change all of that. The human commander, Captain Joshua Calloway, stood in the warship's command center, staring at the holographic display that showed the approaching enemy fleet. His heart raced as he looked over the data. The aliens were strong, their ships enormous and heavily armed, but Calloway didn't flinch. He knew the warship had the power to stop them. He had seen it in the simulations. He had felt the surge of energy as the ship powered up. There was no way the enemy could win this fight, not with this warship in the mix. Captain, we're ready to engage, a voice called out from the communications panel. Calloway nodded, his hand gripping the command console. Prepare for launch. Bring us into position. With a flick of his wrist, the warship surged forward, its engines roaring to life as it tore through space at incredible speeds. The enemy fleet, still unaware of the human ship's true capabilities, continued to advance, their weapons primed and ready for battle. The suspense was palpable. This was the moment that would define the war. This was the moment that would show the galaxy what humanity was capable of. As the warship closed in on the enemy fleet, Captain Calloway's voice rang out across the bridge. Fire! The plasma cannon charged up, glowing bright blue with raw energy. A massive pulse of energy shot out from the warship, slamming into the nearest enemy ship. The result was immediate and devastating. The alien vessel shattered into pieces, it all disintegrating in an instant. The remaining enemy ships froze for a moment, stunned by the sheer power they had just witnessed. They had never seen anything like this before. But the warship wasn't finished. The crew continued to fire relentlessly, taking out ship after ship with precision and speed. The aliens, realizing they were facing something far beyond their expectations, scrambled to regroup, but it was too late. The warship's weapons, combined with the human crew's skill and coordination, overwhelmed them. At every turn, it didn't take long for the enemy fleet to break apart. Within minutes, their ships were scattered, retreating in chaos. As the humans had won, But it wasn't just the power of the warship that had won the day, it was the unyielding resolve of the human crew. They had turned what should have been an impossible fight into a victory. The tension in the command center slowly began to dissipate as the reality of their success sank in. The warship had proven itself in battle. It had lived up to the impossible expectations that had been placed on it. But as the crew celebrated, a dark thought lingered in the back of their minds. This was just the beginning. The galaxy was vast, and there were many more enemies out there. Enemies who would stop at nothing to destroy this new weapon and the warship. As powerful as it was, had only just begun to reveal its true potential. A deadly encounter. The victory over the first wave of enemy ships had been swift and decisive, but humanity knew that it was far from safe as the warship ship stood victorious, looming over the battlefield. The remnants of the alien fleet flood into the darkness of space. The tension, however, was far from over. This was only the beginning, and the aliens were known for their persistence. Captain Joshua Calloway, still standing at the command center of the warship, was quick to assess the situation. The battle had been won, but their enemies would not be so easily defeated. He could sense it. Something bigger was coming. His instincts told him that the retreat was a tactical maneuver, not a surrender. The enemy would return, and they would bring everything they had. Commander Calloway. Ter Ellen Ofo's voice crackled over the comms. The enemy is regrouping. We have detected an anomaly in their fleet. They're massing forces, and they are preparing for a larger assault. It's only a matter of time before they return stronger than before. The screen in front of Calloway flickered, and the holographic display of enemy movements shifted into focus. The remaining alien ships were no longer scattered. They had formed a tight formation, and reinforcements were on the way. The odds were about to shift again. How long until they arrive? Calloway asked, his voice steady but a flicker of uncertainty crossing his mind. Approximately 30 minutes, Voss replied. They are bringing in their largest fleet, yet we need to prepare. Calloway nodded. Get the crew ready for another fight. This time, we're not just facing a few ships, we're facing their entire fleet. The warship's AI system, which had already proven itself in battle, hummed to life, its neural network processing the incoming threat with remarkable speed. It began calculating the most efficient strategies, predicting enemy movements, and countering the tactics before they even had a chance to strike. The ship's eye was more than just a machine. It was an extension of the human crew, working together with them in perfect harmony. As the countdown to the enemy fleet's arrival ticked down, the crew of the warship braced for what was coming. The warship had just shown its true power in battle, but the enemy had learned quickly. They would be prepared for the warship's strength this time, and they would bring new weapons to the table. Calloway knew they couldn't afford to underestimate them again. Minutes later, the enemy appeared larger and more dangerous than anything humanity had faced before. Their ships were massive, like floating cities, bristling with advanced weapons and defensive shields. The sheer size of their fleet sent a wave of dread through the human crew. This wasn't just a battle anymore. This was a war for survival. All crew members prepare for combat, Calloway ordered. We will fight until the end. The warship, its engines roaring to life, once again moved into position. The crew was on high alert, every member working in perfect unison. The AI fed them information at an alarming rate, guiding them with precision, and the weapon systems hummed in anticipation. The warship was ready, but this time the stakes were higher than ever before. As the first alien ship came into range, the warship fired the plasma cannon, unleashed its deadly burst. But this time the enemy was ready. They deployed advanced shielding technology that absorbed the energy blast. The impact caused a massive shockwave, but the enemy ships barely flinched. This is going to be harder than we thought, Captain Calloway muttered under his breath. The alien ships retaliated quickly, launching barrages of energy blasts at the warship, but the ship's energy shields held strong, the blue glow of the defensive barriers flickering as the enemy's weapons bounced harmlessly off. The warship's crew braced for impact, but it was clear that their shields were holding up better than expected. The enemy, however, was not about to back down. They quickly adapted, using new tactics to overwhelm the warship's defenses. Smaller, faster ships darted in and out of the warship's range, launching hit-and-run attacks designed to bypass its shields and strike at its weak points. The warship's eyes struggled to keep up with the unpredictable movements of the enemy. We need to change our strategy, Voss said urgently. The enemy is using new tactics. We have to stay one step ahead. Calloway's mind raced as he quickly formulated a plan. He knew they couldn't rely on brute force alone. The warship's power was unmatched, but the enemy was adapting. He needed to outthink them, not just outgun them. Activate the stealth mode, he ordered. Let's take them by surprise. With a soft hum, the warship vanished from the enemy sensors. The ship, cloaked in a field of invisibility, drifted silently through the battlefield, its weapons primed for an ambush. The enemy, thinking they had gained the upper hand, began to press their attack. But they didn't see the warship until it was too late. With pinpoint accuracy, the warship emerged from the shadows, unleashing its full arsenal on the unsuspecting enemy. The plasma cannon ray through their shields and the advanced energy torpedoes tore their ships apart. The alien fleet, caught off guard, struggled to recover, but the warship was relentless, striking fast and hard, taking down one ship after another. In the chaos, the humans pressed their advantage edge, pushing the enemy into a corner. The battlefield was a storm of explosions, energy blasts, and debris. The alien ships, once confident in their superiority, were now on the defensive. It was a battle of wits, a deadly game of cat and mouse, and the warship was showing them that humanity was far from powerless. But just as victory seemed within their grasp, the unexpected happened. A new threat emerged from the depths of space. The revelation, as the last of the alien ships fell silent, drifting lifelessly through the void of space, the crew of the warship felt the strange mixture of triumph and unease. The battlefield was littered with enemy ships in ruins, their once mighty fleets reduced to nothing but broken husks. The warship had proven itself, its weapons and advanced systems more than a match for the alien fleet. The crew could breathe easy for now, but the victory felt hollow. The enemy was defeated, but something still lingered in the air, an uneasy feeling that they had not faced their greatest challenge yet. Captain der Elena Voss called out from her console, her voice laced with concern. We've received a transmission from deep space. It's a distress signal from one of our colonies. It's been completely wiped out. There are signs of an advanced weapon, something we've never seen before. For Calloway's face hardened. What do you mean by advanced weapon? We don't know yet, she replied, but it's unlike anything we've encountered. It's powerful enough to destroy a whole colony. In an instant, the news hit the crew hard. Just when they thought the enemy had been crushed, a new threat loomed. Humanity had just made a bold statement with the warship, but now it seemed the galaxy had more surprises in store. Calloway glanced at the holographic map in front of him, showing the location of the colony. It was on the far edge of the human empire, far enough that they hadn't anticipated an attack so soon. We need to investigate, Calloway ordered. Prepare the warship. We're heading to the colony. As the warship powered up once again, the tension in the air grew thick. The crew was on high alert, each member wondering what could possibly be out there. What kind of force could destroy an entire colony with one blood? Was it another weapon like the warship, or was it something else entirely? The warship sped through space, its engines roaring with the kind of power that could rip through the galaxy. As they approached the coordinates of the destroyed colony, they saw nothing but silence and desolation. No signs of life. No ships, just the cold, empty remnants of what once was a thriving human settlement. Where is everyone? Rodriguez murmured, scanning the area with her equipment. It's as if they vanished overnight. Calloway stood at the command center, his jaw clenched. Get a scan on the area. Let's figure out what happened. It is. The warship sensors worked to analyze the debris. Something strange appeared on the screen, a faint signature of energy, unlike anything humanity had seen before. It wasn't a weapon the humans had developed. It was something alien, and it was still ready in with power. Captain, we've detected a signature, said Lieutenant Orin, the warship's chief tactical officer. It's coming from that asteroid field. It seems like the source of the energy blast that destroyed the colony. We've never seen anything like it before. Calloway's mind raced. If the alien fleet had managed to develop a new weapon, it could be a game changer. But if it wasn't the aliens, then who or what had the power to strike so decisively? The warship was humanity's greatest weapon, But this new energy signature hinted at something far worse. Prepare for a full scan of the asteroid field, Calloway ordered. I want every inch analyzed, whatever is out there. We find it. The warship moved cautiously toward the field, its crew tense with anticipation. As the ship entered the dense cluster of asteroids, they detected something else hidden deep within the rocks. Was a massive cloaked structure, one that could only be described as a giant weapon. The warship's eye began to analyze the structure, and the results were chilling. It was a hybrid, part alien, part human technology fused together in ways that made no sense. The power it emitted was off the charts, far beyond the limits of current scientific understanding. It's not just a weapon, V said quietly, her voice trembling with realization. It's a super weapon, and it looks like someone has been experimenting with both our tech and the enemy's. But why? Who would create something like this? The crew fell silent. There was a bitter truth settling in. They were not just fighting an external threat. The enemy was more organized and far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. Someone or something was playing both sides against each other, using humanity's own technology against them. Just as the revelation hit the crew, the warship sensors went wild. An enormous explosion rocked the asteroid field, sending shockwaves through the ship. The warship shields flickered, barely holding under the assault. They had been detected. The super weapon had been activated. We've been compromised, shouted Lieutenant Orin. Captain, we need to get out of here now. But it was too late. The enemy knew they were coming, and they had set a trap. The super weapon began to power up again, its energy pulse building with terrifying speed. Calloway's mind raced. Returned fire, all guns now. The warship fired everything it had at the hidden super weapon, but the enemy shield held strong. The blast from the weapon surged forward, and the warship rocked violently, almost thrown off of course. But still they held their ground. We can't outgun this, Voss said, her voice tense. The super weapon is too powerful. We need to think differently. As the countdown to another devastating pulse began, Calloway realized that the only way to win wasn't by brute force. They had to outsmart the weapon, figure out how to disable it fast. And with time running out, they would need every ounce of human engine to survive. The revelation had come too late. The warship had been thrown into a deadly new game, one where the stakes were even higher than before. The revelation continued. The countdown from the super weapon grew louder, a stark reminder that time was running out. The warship's eye was already processing the data, trying to find a way to disable the alien tech. But it was clear the situation was dire. The weapon's energy pulse was building with every passing second, and with its power so concentrated, there was no way the warship could withstand another hit like the last one. The crew's only hope now lay in their ability to think faster than the weapon itself. Captain Calloway stood at the command center, his mind working overtime. His crew was capable, and their unity was their greatest strength. But this was beyond anything they had ever faced before. The weapon was too advanced, its design alien to anything they knew, yet something in his gut told him that there had to be a way to turn the tide. Voss, can you find a weakness in the weapon's energy signature? Calloway asked, his voice steady though his heart raced. Something, anything that we can exploit. Dr. Voss worked furiously at her console, her fingers flying over the keys. She analyzed the data coming from the super weapon's energy signature, searching for any kind of flaw. The ship's shields hummed with power as the crew prepared for the worst. If the super weapon fired again, they would be in trouble. I'm seeing a discrepancy in the power flow, Dr. Voss finally said, her voice filled with a spark of hope. The super weapon is drawing power from an external source, one that is unstable. If we target that source, we could destabilize the entire weapon. But it's risky. If we miss, we're done for. Calloway clenched his fists. We don't have a choice. Orin, get us within range of that power source. Voss, when we're in position, I need you to give the order to fire. Lieutenant Orin nodded, adjusting the warship's trajectory. The ship maneuvered through the asteroid field, weaving between massive rocks and debris, trying to avoid the relentless pulse of energy from the super weapon. Each time it fired, the ship shook, and the AI worked overtime to keep the shields intact. As the warship closed in, the super weapon's energy pulse reached a critical level, the power surging violently. The crew braced themselves for the inevitable. If they didn't act now, the warship would be gone. Hold steady, Calloway said, his voice calm despite the chaos. We're almost there. The warship's engines roared as Orin adjusted the course. Once again, the massive structure of the super weapon loomed ahead, hidden within the dense asteroid field. The unstable energy source was barely visible, but the warship sensors locked onto it, ready for the final strike. Captain Voss called out, her voice filled with urgency. We're in position. Fire when ready. Calloway didn't hesitate. He slammed his fist onto the command console, and the warship unleashed its full firepower in a single concentrated blast, aimed at the energy source. The weapon's plasma cannon flared with blinding intensity as it fired the beam, cutting through the asteroid field like a blade. The entire ship held its breath as the shot hurtled toward its target. For a moment, everything went silent. Then the energy pulse from the super weapon suddenly wavered, and the entire structure began to tremble. The energy source they had targeted had ruptured, sending shock waves through the weapon. The force of the explosion rattled the warship, but it held its course, holding on to the hope that the plan had worked. Then, with a deepening roar, the super weapon erupted in a massive explosion. The shock wave tore through the asteroid field, sending debris flying in every direction. The warship shields flared as the blast hit, but it held, and slowly the ship emerged from the chaos, unscathed. For a long moment, the crew was silent, watching the aftermath of their desperate gamble. The super weapon had been destroyed. The mission was a success, but the victory came at a cost. The enemy had adapted faster than they had expected, and there were still countless unknowns about who or what was behind these deadly weapons, and the revelation that someone or something had been manipulating both humanity and the alien forces raised new questions. Status report, Calloway ordered, breaking the silence. We're in the clear, Captain Orin replied. The super weapon has been neutralized. There are no further threats in the immediate area. Dr. Voss let out a sigh of relief, but her expression remained serious. This isn't over. The enemy might have lost this battle, but we've only scratched the surface of what they're capable of. Whoever is behind this, they're playing a much larger game. Calloway nodded grimly. I know, but for now, we've won this round. Let's head back to base and prepare. The war is far from over, and we need to be ready for whatever comes next. As the warship turned back toward home, its crew could feel the weight of what they had just accomplished, and yet they all knew this was just the beginning. The galaxy was full of secrets, and now humanity had revealed a small glimpse into the terrifying power that lay hidden in the dark corners of space. The warship had proven itself as a nightmare for their enemies, but the true fight had only just begun. The turning point after the destruction of the super weapon, a temporary sense of relief washed over the crew of the warship. Their mission had been a success, and for the first time in a long while they allowed themselves to believe that perhaps the tide of war was turning in their favor. But even as the warship made its way back to base, the weight of what had just happened settled heavily in their hearts. They had faced an unimaginable threat, and there was no denying that the galaxy was far more dangerous than they had ever anticipated. Captain Calloway stood at the bridge, gazing out at the stars that stretched infinitely before them. The warship had proven its power time and time again, but the reality was clear. Humanity's greatest weapon could only do so much. The enemy had only begun to show their true strength. What other weapon did they have hidden in the darkness of space? Who was behind this unholy alliance of human and alien technology? Captain Voss's voice cut through his thoughts. We've just received a transmission from Earth High Command. Wants us back for a debriefing. They're expecting a full report on what happened here. Calloway sighed, his mind still reeling from the events of the past few hours. Understood. Set course for Earth. We'll brief them on what we found. As the warship shifted course toward Earth, the crew couldn't shake the feeling that something bigger was brewing. The super weapon had been just one piece of the puzzle, and the pieces were scattered across the galaxy. The truth about who or what was behind these weapons was still out of reach. The warship's engines hummed steadily as they approached their destination, and a quiet tension settled over the crew. They had won a battle, but they had no delusions about the war. There was still much to learn, and every new revelation only seemed to raise more questions. The warship landed at Earth's primary military base. As they disembarked, the crew was met by high-ranking officials who were eager to hear what had transpired. Calloway and Voss briefed them on the superweapon, the anomalies in the enemy's technology, and their growing suspicions that someone, possibly even a rogue human faction, was aiding the alien forces. As the brief continued, a new figure entered the room. Admiral Jason Northwood, one of the highest-ranking officials in the fleet, took a seat at the table. His stern expression didn't give anything away, but Calloway could tell that something was different. "We've received some troubling intelligence," Admiral Northwood began. "There have been reports of an unknown faction, one that's been working in the shadows. We believe they have infiltrated both human and alien forces." Dr. Voss exchanged a worried glance with Calloway. "What kind of faction are we talking about?" "We're still investigating, but it seems they've been orchestrating the war from behind the scenes," Northwood said, his voice grim. "They've been working to manipulate both sides for years, using the war as a smokescreen for their true objectives. And now they found a way to harness both human and alien technologies to create weapons like the superweapon you encountered." A cold silence filled the room. The realization hit them all at once. Humanity wasn't just fighting an alien enemy. They were fighting against someone from within, someone who knew their secrets and was willing to use them to destroy everything they had worked for. "We're calling them the Shadow Faction," Northwood continued. "They've been behind a creation of weapons like the one you encountered, and they have far more resources than we ever imagined. We don't know who's leading them, but we suspect they have ties to some of the highest ranks in our military." Calloway's mind raced. The Shadow Faction, a group with access to both human and alien technology. Who could possibly have such power, and why were they trying to destroy the galaxy? Or do they have a far more sinister purpose in mind? "How do we fight this faction?" Calloway asked, his voice steady, but his heart pounding. "We don't know yet," Northwood admitted, "but we're preparing for a new kind of war. One where the lines between friend and enemy are blurred. We need to be ready for anything." Dr. Voss looked at the holographic map of the galaxy, her fingers tapping nervously against the table. "We've only just begun to uncover their plans, but we need to move quickly. The Shadow Faction is playing a long game. We got to figure out where they're hiding, what they're planning, and how to stop them before it's too late." Agreed, Calla said, his voice firm. "We'll do whatever it takes. The warship is ready, and the crew is with me. Let's take the fight to them before they can strike again." As the crew returned to their warship, Calloway couldn't shake the feeling that they were standing on the precipice of something far greater than they had imagined. The Shadow Faction had played its cards, and humanity was now in a race against time to stop them. The warship, humanity's greatest weapon, was their only hope. But even that wasn't enough against an enemy that knew no boundaries. The stakes were higher than ever before. The battle had changed, and now it was a war of survival, not just against alien invaders, but against those who sought to tear humanity apart from within. And so the crew of the warship steeled themselves for the fight of their lives, knowing that the turning point in the war had come, and this time there would be no turning back. The final showdown, the days following the revelation of the Shadow Faction, were filled with tension. The crew of the warship, more determined than ever, continued to analyze the growing intelligence reports, trying to piece together the true scope of the enemy's plans. The Shadow Faction had struck a deep blow to humanity, manipulating the very forces that were meant to protect them, yet their motives remained a mystery. The warship had been their most powerful weapon until now. Captain Calloway stood in the command center, staring at the holographic map of the galaxy. The Shadow Faction had been clever, using both alien and human technology to stay one step ahead. The warship had destroyed one of their super weapons, but how many more were out there? How much more damage had they done? While humanity wasn't looking, "Captain, we've identified a possible target." Lieutenant Orin said, his voice breaking through Calloway's thoughts. "A hidden base in the outskirts of the galaxy. We believe this is where they've been building their weapons." "Are we sure?" Calloway asked, his voice steady. "This could be a trap." "We're certain," Orin replied. "The data points to it. They've been using a series of cloaking technologies to hide their movements, but our scans have uncovered a pattern. If we hit this base, we might finally put an end to their operations." Calloway took a deep breath. The crew was exhausted, but there was no turning back. Now they had fought too hard, uncovered too many secrets to stop short of finishing this once, and for all set course for the base. Prepare the crew for a final confrontation will destroy their operations. No matter what it takes. The warship's engines hummed as it prepared for the most dangerous mission of their lives. They were no longer just fighting for survival. They were fighting to expose the true threat to humanity's future. This time, the crew knew they couldn't afford to lose. As the warship mired the base, the crew's nerves were on edge. The last time they had entered enemy territory, they had barely escaped. But this time was different. They had a target, and they knew what was at stake. The Shadow faction had to be stopped before they could bring humanity to its knees, and the warship would be the key to their success or their doom. The base loomed ahead, a dark structure hidden among the stars. It was heavily fortified, its defenses stronger than anything the crew had faced before, but the warship had been through worse. With its weapons primed and shields at full strength, they were ready for anything. All systems are operational. Dr. Voss reported from her console. We've detected movement inside the base. Looks like they know we're here. Then let's not waste any time, Callow said, his voice resolute. Engage. The warship surged forward, its plasma cannons blazing as they tore through the base's outer defenses. Enemy ships scrambled to intercept, but the warship was faster, more agile, and far more deadly. The enemy's weapons barely scratched the warship shields as it pushed forward, cutting a path straight through the base's defenses. But this wasn't just about taking out the enemy ships. Calloway knew that they needed to reach the heart of the base, the core, where the Shadow faction's superweapons were being manufactured. They had to destroy it all before they could escape. All crew prepare for boarding, Calloway ordered. We're going in. The warship docked at the outer hole of the base, and the crew prepared for a ground assault. The sound of their boots hitting the metal floor echoed through the ship as they entered the heart of the enemy stronghold. The base was eerily silent, and the crew couldn't help but feel the weight of the tension in the air. Stay sharp, Calloway muttered, gripping his blaster. This isn't just another fight. This is where it ends. They moved through the base, each corner revealing more of the horror. The Shadow faction had wrought. The walls were lined with technological equipment, some of it human-made, some alien. The fusion of the two was evident everywhere. It was clear that the Shadow faction had been using humanity's own weapons against them, twisting their technology to serve their own dark purposes. But it wasn't the weapons that haunted Calloway. It was the faces of the soldiers they encountered, human soldiers brainwashed and forced into the service of the Shadow faction, their eyes empty and devoid of any hope. The true cost of the war was laid bare before them. As they pushed deeper into the base, the crew encountered fierce resistance. The Shadow faction had anticipated an assault, and they were ready, but the warship's crew had grown stronger with each battle. They fought with a precision and determination that no enemy could match. Finally, they reached the core, a massive chamber filled with advanced machinery, where the next generation of super weapons was being produced. The walls hummed with energy as the crew planted explosives around the room, knowing that this was their last chance to end it all. Calloway's heart raced as he looked over the scene. They had done it. They had found the source of the threat, and now it was time to finish it. Initiate countdown, he ordered. The crew began their retreat as the countdown to the destruction of the base began. The warship had completed its mission. The Shadow faction's reign of terror was coming to an end, but just as they thought they were safe, the ground shook beneath them. A massive explosion rocked the vase. The Shadow faction wasn't going down without a fight. The warship barely made it out before the entire base exploded, sending a shockwave through space. The battle was over, but the war had changed humanity forever. Victory or oblivion. The warship soared through space, the echoes of the explosion still resonating in the void behind them. The base they had just destroyed was nothing more than a cloud of debris now, but the damage it had caused would reverberate across the galaxy for years to come. The Shadow faction had been dismantled, but their influence would not be so easily erased. The fight was over, but the scars of the war would remain forever. Captain Calloway stood at the bridge, staring at the stars ahead. The victory felt empty. They had done what they set out to do, destroyed the super weapon factories, ended the Shadow faction's control, But the true cost of the war was impossible to ignore. Humanity had lost so much. Friends, family, entire colonies had been wiped out in the blink of an eye, but at least they had stopped the faction from carrying out its plans. Captain Darvas's voice broke through his thoughts, filled with both relief and unease. We've neutralized their base, but I'm afraid the war is far from truly over. There are still remnants of the faction scattered across the galaxy, and we may not have seen the last of their technology. Allah's jaw clenched. I know we've put an end to their main operations, but it's clear that the Shadow faction was only part of a much larger game. They were using our own technology against us, and we get the screen. We've won a battle, Captain, but we're not out of danger yet. The galaxy is full of threats, and the balance of power has shifted. We must stay vigilant. The warship's crew had proven themselves together. They had defeated a force that had seemed unbeatable, and they had shown the galaxy that humanity could stand tall against any threat. But Kawe knew they couldn't rest. There would be new challenges, new enemies, and new secrets to uncover. The war had taken its toll, but humanity was still standing for now. We've made it this far, Calloway said, his voice resolute, and we will continue to fight. The Shadow faction might be gone, but this war isn't over, not until we know that the galaxy is safe. With that, the crew of the warship stood together, united in the knowledge that their victory had only just begun. The Shadow faction had been vanquished, but the true battle for humanity's survival lay ahead, and they would be ready no matter what came next. The warship sailed off into the stars, its crew ready to face whatever threats the future might hold. They were the last line of defense in a galaxy forever changed by the fires of war, and they would fight with everything